Hey, I'm Suzanna Lanier, actor and acting coach for over 25 years.
I'm Jess Greenberg, casting director for over 10 years.
We're here to help you navigate this crazy, creative, and sometimes chaotic journey into the film and television world.
We share our insights as to what works.
And invite some pretty spectacular guests to share more ideas to move you on your journey.
So without further ado, let's get into the show.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to our mini-sode. So today we're going to be talking about casting in Toronto. We had Hannah Antaki, who is a casting associate, and she worked on tons of projects with different casting directors in Toronto. And now she's doing some projects of her own also. And there was a few things that stood out for me from this interview. One is that she was very human and very nice and very personable. And from some of our, interviews before, I was thinking, oh gosh, Toronto casting agent, she's going to be like the gatekeeper and very strict and serious. But again, she was saying, like, we are rooting for the actor. We want to find the right actor. We want to see what they can do. We want to work with them. And I thought that was great. And I was like, I've heard that before from our Montreal casting directors, Jess, among others. So I just thought it was interesting to hear that. And it made it, a lot more relatable that wherever you are, you're an actor and you're offering your skill set to serve their project. Yeah. And, help contribute to their project. So that's what you're doing. And what were some highlights that stood out for you, Jess?
Well, I think, one of the highlights was, not highlights, but something that I found really interesting is that even throughout COVID, they've kept auditions. So they went from the room to Zoom, but they're not doing anything by self-tape, which is so interesting to me. And so anyway, now my brain is like churning, like, like, is that the move? Because I still do believe that, like, with more self-tapes, we're able to see more people and give more people opportunities to tape, and be seen. So I guess it's like a weird balance. And anyway, I have to think about that more, I guess.
Yeah. Oh, good. That started getting you thinking about the Zoom. Yeah, well, there's pros and cons, right? There's pros and cons to both, right?
Exactly. But all to say, it's like, it comes down to, we're all in this for the same reason, and we're all people, and we're both creative, and we want to work together. And I think if you're an actor wherever you go. And yes, you might meet different personalities, and maybe not everyone is as pleasant or generous with their time. But that doesn't mean you're less than, like, that's a them problem, not a you problem. And I think, it's, maybe we have to, sort of not think of it as different locations and be so intimidated by a different city. It's, we're all the same. And maybe we're a bit smaller, but doesn't mean anything other than that.
It really is. That's another thing that got me thinking, because I know we've had a certain actors on before and say when they went to Toronto, it was really like the Toronto gatekeepers. It's so hard to get seen there and all this. And she was explaining, like, for a small principal role, she could get very easily 300 submissions. Now they don't accept self-tapes. They don't go by self-tapes. So they're still have their selection, which maybe they'll see 11 people because they're doing Zoom auditions. So she has to narrow down 300 to 11. So obviously there's different factors that come into play, and it's dependent on the role, but that's why it's so hard to get seen. So that's the volume. Like, Jess, have you ever had for a role, 300 Montreal locals submit for it, for a generic
not like
role?
not a principal, but if there was a lead, on one of the features we did, we actually had to cast like a pretty wide net for the leads, and there was about like 1,000 submissions.
Wow. But that's not from Montreal. That's across Canada.
But still, but like, just
that's a lot
with that volume, and then having, like, I don't I don't claim to know everybody, so
Yeah,
it's
you
like
can't.
looking at their resume, looking at their agent, going to IMDb, seeing what's going on there, who are they, like, because when you narrow it down, you have to start somewhere.
Yeah, you have to
um
start somewhere.
yeah, but no, I mean, we could definitely have, let's say, 100 or
Right.
like 200 submissions, but we're self-taping, so we could see maybe about
More.
40,
Yeah.
25, depending on the role. Like, again, it's where are we at in the process? Do we know the director's taste? Are we sort of starting wider, and then as the show continues, are we narrowing down and being more selective in who we call in to tape? So I think it's always like a bit of, not a roller coaster, but it's sort of like you assess per role,
Right.
and it's like, oh, do we want to go outside the box for this a little bit and maybe try these few people, or maybe the agents took a chance and saying, like, I know this is not really what you asked for, but, like, and it's like, why not, like, happy to spend that couple minutes seeing their tape and what they do with it, and if it works out, cool. If it doesn't, cool. And um so I guess it's also like a bit project dependent. um yeah.
Yeah, so yes, I guess that is for Montreal. They do still Jess does still get a lot of submissions, but she can see more over the self tape, which is good.
Yeah.
And there's pros and cons. I mean, the thing about now doing everything over Zoom is you still get to do it from the comfort of your own home. So so that's
But
nice.
yeah, but
Um,
then I find, like, the technical issues could be really, like, just shitty. Like, if
mhm.
there's bad internet, and then the reader and the actor are, like,
Have a
off
delay.
beat. Yeah, like, that is, and then it's like you feel responsible because you're like, I'm hosting this Zoom, and, like, I'm not really giving the actor, like, the best uh environment to do their best. And
Right.
so I think, like, there's other things at play in a Zoom that don't play, like, that aren't an issue. But I do like seeing people, and giving them feedback on the spot or notes on the spot, and seeing how they take those notes. And that there is value to being with someone on Zoom.
Yeah,
um
well, because you can see them at the moment, in the
mhm.
moment, which is great. And they
Yeah.
don't have to worry about, all the getting a reader and the technical stuff and
Yeah.
submitting. They're right there. And so
Yeah.
that the casting worries about that stuff, which is
Yeah.
great. Um,
And it's true,
yeah,
when we were talking about, like, the one-liners, like, those are the auditions we need to see. Everyone's like, why do I have to audition for that? Like, what I can do. And it's like, we do know what you can do, but also, like, we need to see it specifically, and so does the network. So,
yeah,
and it's true, for a couple of the smaller roles, we did just have, like, we saw people on Zoom because we felt it would be almost faster and easier. And um but yeah, going back to, like, the audition is the opportunity, like, especially for her, who's going from 300 down to 11.
yeah,
Like, that's the winning ticket,
yeah,
really,
yeah.
the opportunity to put yourself on tape and to be seen.
Yeah, and Jess
So
has said that too. You've said yeah, you, Jess, has said that too, and she was saying that just that, like, if we're seeing you, it's because we like what you're doing. We're
yeah.
trying to find you a role. So, we're not we like you. So take it as not necessarily a compliment, but another opportunity. We're trying to find you something,
Yeah.
So
And
so
yeah, when you don't get it, it's not necessarily about you either. It's just
yeah.
that, like, they have to be so selective. So, yeah, it could be really frustrating. I could empathize with that, but
Yeah, so it was nice, I felt, just to see we wanted to see another perspective and another thing, and you guys will hear it. Toronto doesn't have necessarily a bias towards Montreal. They do. She said they do Zoom auditions and include Montrealers too, and tax credits have a small part to do with it, but it's not like for her anyways, the projects that she's working on, if you're willing to work as a local to come to Toronto and put yourself up, now with Zoom, they don't really have a problem with that. They're not going
Yeah.
to cast everything out of Montreal for an Ontario project. Obviously, then tax credits would be a problem. But if you're talking about one or two castings from out of province, it's not that big a deal.
Yeah. It's true. So
So everybody, you can get
Mhm.
yourself your agents and start trying to get out there in Toronto, but be patient because there's a lot of people in Toronto.
Yeah.
300 per role trying to get into the top 11. So
Wild.
that's all. It's just acting is very competitive. There's a
Yeah.
lot, that's what you
And
have to understand. But
that's
you
the other
can't.
thing. That's the selection. Like that's why your headshot is really important and a demo is really
Mhm.
important because if you
Yeah.
want to actually even be invited to audition, then all they have to go by is your resume, demo, and headshot.
Yeah, that is something she said, and I think it's more important in Toronto than here is having a demo because often, or not often, but sometimes that's what they'll do. So the director will say, or sorry, your agent will say, "Look, I really think this person. I'd like them to be seen. Can I send you the demo?" And then she said, "Yeah, I'll spend." 2, 3 minutes looking at somebody's demo if the agent's telling me this is a perfect person for the part. And if I like their demo, then I will bring them in for the part.
Yeah.
So I think more so than not anywhere, but in Montreal, you could have a demo. I think it's great to have a demo, but the Montreal casting people will see your self tape if it's a self tape,
Hmm.
most of the time. Whereas in Toronto, especially if they're doing the auditions over Zoom and she's only selecting 11, you do have to have a good demo to get in that room. Like you just have to have a good demo.
Yeah.
That's probably one of the biggest differences. That the two differences that she said was yes, Montrealers, it is not a workshop and audition. It is a audition, and you have to be prepared with choices. And I think most Montrealers do, but there might be a couple who of the newer ones who are kind of like, I'm at your disposal, and they don't
Yeah.
like that.
Well, not it wasn't actually anything she observed,
Okay.
just to clarify, right? It was something that Rosina had mentioned having worked in
Yes.
both. And she
Yeah.
said that's what she felt sometimes. So we had asked her if she felt that. And I don't think there was anything specific she had to say about that, but more so like just reiterating, yeah, of course, it is the audition. It's not a workshop. Can we do a scene a few times? Of course, but come prepared because this
Yeah.
is an audition.
Yeah, it's an audition. It's an
Yeah,
audition.
exactly.
So come prepared and be flexible because to take the direction. And that's the same in Montreal or the same in Toronto. That hasn't changed. And
Yeah,
they want to cast. I mean, they want to get the right person for the role. They
we
are
got a
rooting.
job to do.
Yes, they have a job. They have to do
Yeah.
it. So yeah, that stood out. And also to be aware that the volume is a lot, so it is harder to get into those rooms, but it is not impossible. And there are steps to take if that's something you want. And one step is you really have to get an agent to get in the union projects. Like I don't see how you're going to get
Yeah.
seen in that Zoom room with no agent and no credits. Like I just don't see how you're going to do that. So you
Yeah.
do have to get that agent. And you have to put together a very good demo to prove that you're a good actor. And if
Mhm.
that's set, then your agent can say, "Look, this person's good and they're right for this part," and that will probably get you in the room. So it's just the steps you have to take.
Agree.
Excellent. So good eye-opening interview. You guys are all going to listen on Thursday, and then you're not going to leave us for Toronto, but you may think of expanding your auditions to Toronto. It might happen. We'll see.
Yeah. We're not against Toronto. We want to be just for all of Canada.
All of Canada. We want
Canadian
all
talents.
Canadian talent working, bouncing from province to province, joyful, welcoming, happy, creative. We got this.
Go team.
Go team, go. All right. Have a great week, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
If you're enjoying this podcast, we would really appreciate it if you could take a moment to support us.
Leave us a review on your favorite podcast app. You can share this podcast with your friends and colleagues, and follow us on social media at Book the Room Podcast.
We put out episodes weekly, so subscribe to the shows to get notified.